consciousness needs classical memory in order to store its experience. In other words, there is no. I mean, people think that you can put into memory a quantum state. No, you cannot do that. Quantum bits cannot be put into memory, or they evolve, and they interact and so on. So there is a continuity, there is a dynamism that is that in order to create continuity with something that you experienced before, you need to put into long-term memory your experience symbolically. And the symbolic, and when you put, and what you put into a long-term memory, that symbolic memory is a small portion of what you were experiencing. Because what I was experiencing was a pure quantum state. That pure quantum state was known from the inside, but I cannot clone it. I cannot reproduce it. Not even I can reproduce my own state. The no cloning theorem in quantum physics is pretty strict about it. No one can, that quantum state cannot be known, period. So from the outside, only a portion of it. So I can only put portions of it into long-term memory and then recognize them as a memory of an experience later. But I cannot store my experience per se. The Big Bang is a way we can interpret the equations that seem to work and that work well, though there are many questions still open, but the equations that we have of physics, that all show that there has to be an expansion uh, uh, for the universe. So if you reverse, and they are all reversible. So if you reverse the time, then this expansion has to become a contraction. And so if you try to interpret what those equations are saying, you had the picture that we call the Big Bang theory. But that assumes that the equations that we have, first of all, have been valid that way from day one. Who says so? I mean, there is evolution of everything, but not of the equations of physics. Come on. I mean, so if it works, you can make it to work by jerry rigging it, and we have made it to work, but it doesn't mean that that's the way things happen. And in fact, if I'm saying that the reality that what we call reality, the physical reality is the symbolic aspect of reality, where the deeper reality is the semantic reality, the meaning that conscious entities and one get out of living, existing. And so then in this if you start with this concept, then the physical laws have to be the development of a language, of the language of entities that talk to each other. And the reason why language is important is because we obey the language because we want to communicate. But it's not the constriction that the laws of physics, bring with them. The laws of physics are something that's it. From day one, there are these laws, and forever there will be these laws. But if laws instead are really the expression of something deeper, which is the communications of conscious entities that communicate with each other symbolically, and the symbols, since they need to represent the meaning, that it has its own logic, its own structure. So the symbolic aspect of reality has to reflect, to be proper, to reflect this more deeper symbolic structure of meaning. Then the laws of symbols have evolved with this self-knowing of one, because the self-knowing of one, has been evolving over time in this model. You see, so the entire narrative changes once you accept that consciousness must be fundamental. Because if consciousness is fundamental, it must have had an impact on the way the world works. But that's not what is described by cosmology. Cosmology describes a world in which consciousness developed 13.8 billion years ago. And one, by the way, did not create in the sense of creation. One discover itself. You see, Each discovery is a creation, but it is a novelty even for one. You see, it's not that one knows what he wants and creates something. I mean, this is the kind of old God, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is childish. But one that wants to know itself, awakes and wants to know itself, and and so all of a sudden, any new things that he knows about itself is a new entity, like I said earlier, but is an entity that now can know itself in turn. And so now we have this cascading of this explosion of entities that want to know itself, that create, and the expansion is an expansion not in physical space, is an expansion in the semantic space of knowing, in the semantic space of meaning, and of which the expansion of the universe is the physical correlate of this expansion in this universe, of meaning, which is not this physical universe. This physical universe is just, is what we see, our body sees of a reality that we don't know what it is. Yeah, I'm sure that you read the book of Don Hoffman, for example, that talks about that what we see is only, it uses the word icon on the icon, and icon in a display, right? Where we see an icon, but the icon is a representation of something, of much deeper processes that go on in a computer, which we cannot see. And we think that the icon is reality, but the icon is not reality. It's simply the way the body sees this deeper information, and presents it to us, and we see an icon. And I mean, I had arrived to the same conclusion, not said in this crisp way, but that what we see is not what is there. I mean, cognitive scientists think that what we see is veridical, meaning it's pretty close to what is actually here. Well, not a chance, not a chance. I mean, here, for example, here in this you know cubic foot of nothing that is air, there are now at least 100,000 simultaneous phone conversations going on. If I had the right tool, the right cell phone, to pick each one of them, and they're all going on here. I don't see them. So can I claim that they do not exist because I don't see them? And of course, 200 years ago, we didn't even know that electromagnetic waves existed, so they couldn't possibly exist because there wasn't even the concept of electromagnetic wave. So how many other concepts we have yet to discover? After all, we have discovered in the last 50 years the concept of dark matter, the dark energy, that 75 years ago nobody knew about it. So you see, we keep on discovering new things, then we reinvent ourselves, we reinvent our theories to include the new stuff that we discover. But can we claim that we know everything that there is? I mean, it would be dishonest to say so, and disingenuous. The Big Bang is a representation of something much deeper, of some phenomena which are much deeper, which could never be understood unless we say that consciousness existed even before the Big Bang. Because the Big Bang encapsulates aspects of the evolution, of our evolution, which we are the creator of this universe collectively, not me or you. Collectively, we all have created, and God knows how many gazillions of other conscious entities there are that collectively have created this. So being the creators of this, we cannot accept that the laws of physics, were imposed at the beginning of everything. It just doesn't make any sense. They had to be evolved. They must have co-evolved. They must have co-evolved with the comprehension, with the self-knowing that we have achieved over time, over the eons, so that then the symbolic representation of our understanding has all the richness that there is, but not all of it, a sufficient richness to be a representative of something which is richer, which is our experience. Because our experience, being associated with, being described by, represented by a pure quantum state, cannot be reproduced, cannot be in its entirety, can only be, can only be known in part, 1 bit per qubit, as we know, theorem of Lebo. So we can only see information which is shareable for classical information, which is a shortcut, a very or a small amount of what each of us feels. And you know that, you can understand that, because the love that you feel for someone or for a child or for whatever, that love, you know that is so much deeper than what you can express in words. And words are classical symbols, shareable symbols.
What was really catching my attention about everything that you were just exploring is that sense of the thing that you're pointing to being irreducible. And like from the scientific materialist reductionist paradigm, it's like always a constant seeking for that which is reducible. And like that which is irreducible, could you unpack a bit more about what it means to talk about that which is irreducible and its place in the world?
Well, the if we believe this position, of course, one being holistic, meaning that is not made of separable parts. In fact, is made of parts which are parts whole, meaning that each part contains the essence of the whole, and all the movements, intentions, and you know uh, fundamental uh, fundamental urges that one feels are also part of what we feel. So, and I made the example that each cell of our body has the same characteristics, because each cell of our body contains the genome of the entire organism, not a special genome for itself, but the genome of the entire organism, which expresses in that cell only a small portion of itself, but the cell, in its own experience, can then decide to express some other portion of the genome, which is the genome that contains the essence of the whole. So we are organized similarly, and that's an important distinction between computers, which are organized using switches, which are on-off parts, just switches that know nothing about the system. They have no knowledge, no nothing. They are simply replaceable and separable parts of a whole that is only the sum of its parts, where our body is more than the sum of its parts, just like one is more than the sum of us in terms of its knowing. So this means that the self-knowing, whether it is your self-knowing, my self-knowing, one self-knowing, they are all interconnected. They are not separable. Uh, what I know about myself is deeply connected with what you know about yourself and what I know about your knowing about yourself. And so that makes this holistic whole ever expanding. And irreducible means that you cannot take any part out of the total without changing completely the total. So, it's a concept that can only be understood if you understand quantum physics, because this type of holism is the holism that occurs with the entanglement and with the superposition, which are two fundamental properties which are interconnected of quantum physics that distinguish quantum physics from classical physics. Therefore, distinguish our knowing, self-knowing, from the algorithms that a classical computer uses.